Breaking right now. President Donald Trump just threatened to destroy the world's largest natural gas field. Not damage it, not strike parts of it, destroy it completely. The entire South Pars gas field, 40% of the planet's proven natural gas reserves, shared between Iran and Qatar. The energy lifeline for Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Trump stood in front of reporters at the White House this afternoon and said, "If Iran launches one attack on Qatar, we will massively blow up South Pars, the whole thing. Gone." Those were his exact words, massively blow up the whole thing. This is not a threat to hit Iranian military bases. This is not a threat to destroy missile sites or nuclear facilities. This is a threat to obliterate the single most important piece of energy infrastructure on Earth. A gas field so large it supplies fuel to heat homes in Germany, power factories in Japan, and generate electricity across South Korea. And Trump just said he will destroy it if Iran touches Qatar. Let me explain why this threat is insane, why it exposes how desperate the United States has become, and why the next 48 hours could determine whether the global economy survives or collapses into the worst energy crisis in human history. Start with what South Pars actually is, because most people have no idea how critical this one location is to the entire planet. South Pars is a massive offshore gas field located in the Persian Gulf. It sits beneath the seabed between Iranian and Qatari waters. Geologically, it is one continuous reservoir, but politically, it is divided. The northern section belongs to Qatar, where it is called the North Field. The southern section belongs to Iran, where it is called South Pars. Together, this single gas field contains 1,800 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. That is not a typo, 1,800 trillion. To put that in perspective, that is more gas than the entire United States has consumed in the last 50 years. It is 40% of all known natural gas reserves on the planet. 40%. And Trump just threatened to blow it up. Here is why that threat is catastrophic. South Pars is not just a strategic asset. It is the foundation of the global liquefied natural gas market. Qatar exports more LNG than any other country on Earth, and 90% of Qatar's gas comes from the North Field section of this reservoir. Europe relies on Qatari LNG to replace Russian gas that was cut off after the Ukraine war. Germany, Italy, France, the Netherlands all depend on shipments from Qatar to keep their industries running and their homes heated. Asia relies on Qatari LNG even more. Japan, South Korea, China, India all import massive quantities of gas from Qatar. Without it, their economies stop. Power plants shut down, factories close, transportation grinds to a halt. And Iran's section, South Pars, supplies domestic Iranian energy needs and is a major source of revenue for the regime. Destroying South Pars would not just hurt Iran, it would collapse the global energy market. Oil prices, which are already at $115 per barrel, would spike to $200 or higher overnight. Natural gas prices would quintuple. Gasoline in America would hit $8 per gallon. Europe would face energy blackouts. Asia would experience rolling power outages. The global economy would enter a recession so severe it would make 2008 look like a minor downturn. And Trump just threatened to do it. Why? Because yesterday, Iran attacked Qatar. Not directly, but close enough that Qatar is panicking. Iranian missiles struck the Ras Laffan LNG terminal on Qatar's northeastern coast. Ras Laffan is the world's largest LNG export facility. It handles the vast majority of Qatar's gas shipments. The strike caused extensive damage. Fires burned for hours. Export operations were halted. And Qatar, a tiny nation of 2.9 million people that has tried to remain neutral in this war, suddenly realized it is not safe. Qatar immediately expelled all Iranian military attachés from Doha. Persona non grata, gone. Qatar also reached out to Saudi Arabia and requested security guarantees. And Saudi Arabia, which has been trying to avoid direct involvement in this war, issued a statement saying it reserves the right to take military action to defend its interests and the interests of its Gulf partners. Translation: if Iran keeps hitting Qatar, Saudi Arabia might join the war on the side of the U.S. and Israel. That is the context Trump is operating in. Qatar is asking for protection. Saudi Arabia is threatening Iran. And Trump sees an opportunity to force Iran into an impossible position. So he issued the threat. If Iran attacks Qatar again, the U.S. will destroy South Pars, the entire field, Iranian section and Qatari section, both gone. But here is the problem. That threat makes no sense strategically, because destroying South Pars would hurt Qatar just as much as Iran. Qatar's economy is almost entirely dependent on gas exports from the North Field. If Trump destroys the reservoir, Qatar loses its primary source of revenue. The Qatari government collapses. The country becomes economically unviable. So Trump is threatening to destroy the very country he claims to be protecting, unless Trump is bluffing, unless he is betting that Iran will back down because the threat is so extreme, that Iran will conclude that attacking Qatar is not worth the risk of losing South Pars. But Iran is not backing down, because Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi responded to Trump's threat within hours, and his response was chilling. Araghchi held a press conference in Tehran this afternoon. He stood in front of cameras and said, "Iran has used only a fraction of its power in this war. We have shown restraint. We have avoided targeting certain facilities because we did not want to escalate beyond control. But if the United States or Israel strikes South Pars, there will be zero restraint. We will use everything, every missile, every drone, every capability, and we will target everything, every oil facility in Saudi Arabia, every LNG terminal in Qatar, every American base in the region, every Israeli city. The world will see what Iran is truly capable of. Zero restraint, everything, every capability." That is Iran saying, if you destroy South Pars, we will trigger an energy and military apocalypse that makes the current war look like a minor skirmish. This is the logic of mutual assured destruction. Trump threatens to destroy Iran's most valuable asset. Iran threatens to destroy everyone else's assets in response. And the global economy is caught in the middle, hostage to two governments that have backed themselves into a corner and cannot afford to back down. But let me tell you what is actually happening behind the scenes, because the public threats are only part of the story. The private panic is far worse. European leaders are calling the White House nonstop, German Chancellor, French President, Italian Prime Minister, all begging Trump not to strike South Pars, because Europe cannot survive without Qatari gas. Russia already cut off pipeline gas to Europe. If Qatar's LNG exports stop, Europe faces energy blackouts this winter, industries shut down, unemployment spikes, governments fall. European leaders are telling Trump, do not destroy South Pars. We will not survive it. Asian leaders are equally terrified. Japan's prime minister called Trump yesterday. South Korea's president called this morning. Both said the same thing. If South Pars is destroyed, our economies collapse. We have no alternative energy source. We depend on Qatari LNG. Please do not do this. Even Qatar is begging the U.S. not to follow through, because Trump's threat to protect Qatar by destroying its primary source of income is insane. Qatari officials are privately telling American diplomats, "We appreciate the security guarantee, but please do not blow up the gas field that funds our entire country." But Trump is not listening, because Trump sees this as leverage. He believes that by threatening the unthinkable, he can force Iran to stop attacking Qatar. He believes Iran will blink first. But Iran is not blinking. Iran is escalating, because Iran knows that if the U.S. destroys South Pars, Iran has nothing left to lose. So Iran might as well take everyone down with it. This is the danger of threats that are too extreme. They stop being deterrents and start being suicide pacts. Now let me explain the technical reality of what Trump is threatening. Because massively blow up South Pars is not as simple as dropping a few bombs. South Pars is not a single building or a military base. It is an offshore gas field spread across thousands of square kilometers of seabed. The gas is trapped in rock formations 3,000 meters below the ocean floor. To destroy it, the U.S. would need to target the wellheads, the processing platforms, the pipelines, the export terminals. Dozens of structures spread across the Persian Gulf. It would require hundreds of airstrikes, thousands of munitions, days of sustained bombing, and even then, the gas reservoir itself cannot be destroyed. The gas is still there underground. What the U.S. can destroy is the infrastructure that extracts, processes, and exports the gas. The platforms, the pipelines, the terminals. Without that infrastructure, the gas is useless. It stays in the ground. But here is the critical detail. Much of that infrastructure is shared between Iran and Qatar. The reservoir is geologically continuous. Some pipelines cross the maritime border. Some processing facilities serve both sides. If the U.S. destroys Iranian infrastructure, it risks damaging Qatari infrastructure. If the U.S. bombs too close to the maritime border, it could hit Qatari platforms. And if the U.S. uses weapons that are too powerful, the environmental damage could spread across the entire Gulf. Because destroying gas infrastructure does not just stop production. It causes massive environmental catastrophe, gas leaks, oil spills, fires that burn for months, toxic smoke that spreads across the region. Marine ecosystems destroyed, fisheries collapse, coastal populations poisoned. The 1991 Gulf War saw Saddam Hussein set Kuwait's oil fields on fire. The fires burned for 9 months. The smoke was visible from space. The environmental damage lasted decades. Trump is threatening to do the same thing to South Pars, on a scale 10 times larger. And he is doing it to protect Qatar. But the environmental consequences are only part of the disaster. The economic consequences are even worse. If South Pars is destroyed, global LNG exports drop by 30% overnight. Europe, which imports 40% of its LNG from Qatar, faces immediate shortages. Gas prices in Europe quintuple within days. Industries that depend on gas, chemicals, fertilizers, plastics, steel, all shut down because fuel costs become prohibitive. Unemployment spikes. Governments face protests. Some governments fall. Asia faces the same crisis. Japan, which imports 75% of its energy, has no alternative if Qatari LNG stops. Power plants switch to oil, driving oil prices even higher. Rolling blackouts become necessary to ration electricity. Factories close, supply chains collapse, and the United States, which Trump claims to be protecting, suffers too, because global energy markets are interconnected. If LNG prices spike in Europe and Asia, U.S. natural gas producers will export more to take advantage of high prices. That reduces domestic supply. U.S. natural gas prices rise. Electricity costs increase. Home heating bills double. And gasoline, which is already over $4 per gallon, climbs toward $8. The economic pain spreads to every American household, all because Trump threatened to blow up a gas field to protect Qatar by destroying Qatar's economy. This is not strategy. This is desperation masquerading as strength. But here is the most terrifying part. Trump might actually do it, because Trump has backed himself into a corner. He made the threat publicly. If Iran attacks Qatar again and Trump does not follow through, he looks weak. He looks like he bluffed and got called. And Trump cannot afford to look weak. Not with an election coming, not with his entire political brand built on strength and decisiveness. So if Iran launches one more missile at Qatar, Trump might actually order the strikes. Not because it makes strategic sense, but because he said he would. And Trump keeps his promises even when they are catastrophic. Meanwhile, Iran is preparing for that exact scenario. Iranian military commanders are moving assets, dispersing missile launchers, hiding drones, preparing for the largest retaliatory strike in the history of the Islamic Republic. Because if the U.S. destroys South Pars, Iran will respond with everything it has, and everything is more than most people realize. Despite 3 weeks of intense bombing, despite losing dozens of senior commanders, despite infrastructure destruction and economic collapse, Iran still has significant military capability. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard admitted this morning that Iran's regime is intact but degraded. Intact, meaning the government still functions. The IRGC still operates. The missile forces still launch. Iran is hurt, but Iran is not broken. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth contradicted Gabbard in the same briefing, saying Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated and its military shattered. So which is it? Is Iran intact or obliterated? The fact that the U.S. intelligence community and the Defense Department cannot agree on Iran's status shows how chaotic this war has become. Nobody knows what is true anymore. And when you do not know the enemy's actual capability, you cannot make informed decisions about threats. Trump is threatening to destroy South Pars without knowing whether Iran can actually follow through on its counter threats. That is gambling with the global economy, and the stakes could not be higher because we are now 20 days into a war that was supposed to last 2 weeks, Oil is at $115 per barrel, up from $75 before the war started. That is a 53% increase. Gas is over $4 per barrel nationwide, heading toward $5. Stock markets are crashing. Asian indices fell 2.7% today on fears of energy collapse. The U.S. Treasury Secretary admitted this morning that the administration is considering unsanctioning Iranian oil. Think about that. The U.S. is at war with Iran, and the Treasury Secretary is suggesting we lift sanctions on Iranian oil because energy prices are too high. That is admission of desperation. The war was supposed to destroy Iran's ability to threaten the region. Instead, it has created an energy crisis that threatens the entire global economy. And now Trump is threatening to make it 10 times worse by destroying South Pars. But Qatar is not the only country panicking. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, just announced it reserves the right to take military action to protect its interests. That is Saudi Arabia warning Iran, if you keep attacking Qatar, we will join the war. And if Saudi Arabia enters the war, the conflict expands beyond anything we have seen. Saudi oil fields become targets. Iranian missiles, which have already hit UAE and Bahrain, will target Saudi Arabia's Ghawar field, the largest oil field on Earth. If Ghawar is damaged, oil prices do not go to $115 here. They go to $200, maybe $300. At that point, the global economy does not just slow down, it stops. And all of this, every bit of this escalation, every economic catastrophe, every threat and counter-threat is happening because Trump made a threat he cannot take back. Massively blow up South Pars, the whole thing gone if Iran attacks Qatar. And Iran is daring him to try, because Iran knows that destroying South Pars is a suicide move. It destroys Iran, but it also destroys Qatar, Europe, Asia, and the global economy. Nobody wins. Everyone loses. That is the definition of mutual assured destruction. And we are now one Iranian missile away from triggering it. Day 20. Trump threatens to destroy 40% of the world's natural gas supply. Iran promises zero restraint in response. Qatar is begging everyone to calm down. Europe and Asia are panicking. Oil is at 115s, gas is heading to $5, and the global economy is being held hostage by two leaders who have both threatened the unthinkable and cannot back down without losing face. Subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because the next Iranian attack on Qatar, whenever it comes, will determine whether Trump follows through on his threat, and if he does, everything changes. Energy crisis, economic collapse, regional war expanding to Saudi Arabia. This is the moment when a war that was supposed to be quick and decisive became a war that could destroy the global economy. Tell me in the comments, do you think Trump will actually destroy South Pars if Iran attacks Qatar? Or is this the biggest bluff in presidential history? I will see you in the next update.